welcome to Crime in Court. This is the trial of Richard Allen, the Delphi homicides, Indiana versus Richard Allen, and we're going to be talking about his sentencing. So, as you can tell, this is a voiceover only. I am still recovering hip surgery, yada, yada, yada. I don't feel like repeating this over and over again. I'm doing fine, but yeah, I just can't really sit up for long periods of time. So, we're going to do voiceovers instead until I'm feeling a little bit better from my surgery. But I mean, I'm feeling good. I just, you know, sitting up hurts. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about where we're at. So I covered, parts of the trial. I gave you some different ex users recountings of what happened inside the courtroom because obviously there was no camera in the courtroom. So that's the last since I've done any kind of update was I believe we were still in, waiting for or no, he was convicted. So I haven't really done a video since then. Partially because it's depressing to me that our justice system failed this man, but also partially because of everything that was going on and my hip and just life. So I'm getting to this now. He was sentenced just this past December 20th. So he um he was convicted back in, the trial ended like end of October, early November, I want to say, or was it maybe even closer to why can't I remember now? It was at least a month prior to his sentencing. So that I know. So he was sentenced on December 20th. So let's actually read through some of these filings and things. So I have a lot to kind of get through, and we're going to do this in parts. So, first off, I have the sentencing of Richard Allen, and we're going to go through some things that were said, victim impact statements, the sentencing memorandum from the defense, and why he doesn't want to attend why he didn't want to attend the sentencing hearing, or his family, whatever. We'll get to that. And then some other motions and things, and we'll get to um, press conference. We will watch the press conference. I've got some other things that I found were really interesting that kind of came out a little bit later on. So please hit that like button and let's begin because I think I have a lot of good content coming your way. All right, so this is the sentencing memorandum. This is the first document we're going to go over. It was uh, filed 12/18/2022, which, as you know, as I've said, December 20th was the hearing of his sentencing. So this came out 2 days prior to the hearing from the defense. So let's see what they have to say. Comes now defendant Richard Allen by and through counsel Andrew Baldwin, Brad Rosie, and Jennifer Auger, and in anticipation of the sentencing hearing on December 20th, 2024, in the above referenced cause number, respectfully requests this court to fashion an appropriate sentence in recognition of the foregoing memorandum. Practical sentencing issues and constraints. Richard Allen maintains his innocence and is hopeful that the appellate process will provide him with an opportunity to present a full defense at a second trial. For this reason, Richard's defense counsel advised Richard Allen to not participate in providing information for the pre sentence investigation report to the Allen County Probation Department, as defense counsel assessed that there was no value in Richard Allen continuing to talk to state actors. I agree. You should not talk to state actors unless you have an attorney present. It should be noted for the record that this court hand selected the Allen County Probation Department to conduct the PSI and interact with Richard Allen without any input from the defense nor any explanation as to why the Carroll County Probation Department could not conduct the PSI. Additionally, Carroll County Local Rule LR 08TR 7910 provides an analogous example of how a special judge should be selected from a contiguous county and believe that the proper methodology for selecting a special probation department appointment, should a good reason exist, would be appointing a probation office from a contiguous county to conduct the PSI. So, whatever the heck that means, something about this PSI was done in Allen County and should have been done in Carroll County or something along those lines. I'm not really sure. Um, but whatever reason they're questioning how things are being done, which, you know, welcome to the program. We've been questioning how things are being done since the very beginning when he was thrown into solitary confinement for almost a full year. Um, or no, it was like 18 months or something like that. It was over a year. He was in solitary confinement with no real explanation as to why. And his attorneys weren't notified, even though he had an attorney at the time, which was uh, Brad Rosie. All right, anyways, so throughout this case, Richard Allen has brought to the court's attention that he was detained in solitary confinement without due process. This constitutional violation by the state was then exacerbated by the assignment of staff psychologists contracted by the IDOC, who, while having a deep personal interest in the case, engaged in quote unquote confidential discussions with Mr. Allen about the details of the acts for which he was accused. And I'm sure there's quoting that because she leaked information and things and stuff, like to uh that YouTuber Gray Hughes, who knew things that he shouldn't have known. I believe he was talking to Dr. Walla, who they're referring to here. So these confidential discussions that detailed Alan's acts or, the supposed crimes. In total, Mr. Allen was housed in 4 different jails or prisons during his detention without any input from himself or his appointed counsel. During this time, Mr. Allen was exposed to staff, law enforcement officials, and offenders, all of whom have reported circumstances which negatively impacted his defense. So, all of these people who negatively impacted his defense were people that he came in contact with during his time in all these 4 different jails. This is not the intended purpose of pretrial detention in our system of criminal justice. So, did all these people come and, engage with him because that's how they were trying to build their case? So it would seem. This is not the intended purpose of pretrial detention in our system of criminal justice. As a result of these constitutional violations, Richard Allen's defense team believes it has an obligation to protect him from the prospect of any further inappropriate contacts with state actors. So, anyone from the state, including psychologists hired by the state, anyone uh, in the IDOC where he's incarcerated that wants to talk to him about his case, he should not be talking about his case to anyone. Additionally, Richard Allen is 52 years old. Pursuant to IC 35523, Richard is facing 45 years, 130 years of imprisonment, or 45 years to 135 years to imprisonment. It is an unlikely scenario that under 3552 or 2.2, this court would sentence Richard Allen to the mandatory minimum sentence and run the counts concurrently. On his best day, Richard Allen would receive a 45-year mandatory prison sentence by the most biased judge in the world. With it doesn't say that, sorry. Um, that was me interjecting there. All right, so with good time credit, this would amount to 33.75 actual years in prison. This means that Richard, on his best day at sentencing, would be released from prison at 85 years of age. The practical reality is that unless this matter is reversed and retried, Richard Allen is likely facing the rest of his life in prison. Even on his best day at sentencing, Richard will be 85 years old upon his release. With those facts in mind, the defense advised Richard Allen to not participate in the pre-sentence process. Again, his continued interaction with state actors does not make sense considering that a second trial may occur, which would allow him to present a full defense. Additionally, Richard will be serving this lengthy sentence whether he provides a statement to the Allen County Probation or chooses to avoid providing a sentence to this Allen County Probation Department. This reality also precipitated the defense to advise Richard to not participate in the process. The defense provides this condensed sentencing memorandum considering the practical issues detailed in the previous paragraphs. Dismissal of counts 1 and 2. Double jeopardy prevents Mr. Allen from being sentenced on both his M convictions and the felony M conviction for Abby Williams and Liberty German. So there's a felony and a state conviction, I suppose, is how it is. Hold on one second, it's going to get loud. So as I was saying, state the state M count and then the felony M count. So they cannot be convicted on both, I think is what they're saying. So double jeopardy prevents him from being convicted on both. Same thing, Richard was found guilty of count 1, felony M for victim 1, count 2, felony M, victim 2, count 3, M, victim 1, and count 4, M, victim 2. So, however, the jury convicted Mr. Allen of both the M and felony M of victims 1 and 2. An individual cannot be convicted and sentenced for both M and felony M, where only one occurrence took place, which makes sense. You can't be convicted for one crime twice. It's two different charges on one crime. So when a jury finds a defendant guilty of both M and felony M of the same victim, the court must vacate the felony M conviction and enter judgment solely on the M conviction. Therefore, Mr. Allen requests the court vacate his convictions for felony M and enter judgment solely on counts 3 and 4. I hope that made sense. It made sense to me. So there were 4 counts. The first 2 were the felony counts, and the second 2, counts 3 and 4, are just the Therefore, request the court vacate his convictions for the felony M. Sorry, I got that backwards. So the first two are count 1, felony M, count 2. Yeah, I got it right. Counts 3 and 4 then are M and just M. No felony M, just M. All right, so when a jury finds a defendant guilty of both, they must vacate the felony M conviction. Okay. Statutory mitigating factors. The person has no history of delinquency or criminal activity, or this person has led a law-abiding life for a substantial period before commission of the crime. Richard Allen has no prior history criminal history, and he maintains his innocence on this charge. Richard's lack of any prior criminal history is a mitigating factor. Number 2, imprisonment of the person will result in undue hardship of the person or the dependents of the person. Richard Allen was the main breadwinner for the household before he was arrested and sent to Westville Prison without a hearing or attorneys present. I'm going to stop right there because it reminded me he was transferred back to Westville, which is where they did most of the awful things to him, and put him in solitary. So he was going back to Westville. That's he got transferred there, I believe, last weekend. All right, so his imprisonment has created and will continue to create a hardship on his wife of 30 plus years, Kathy Allen. Non-statutory mitigating factors. A number of non-statutory factors exist in the case. Among them, one, Richard Allen served in the United States Army National Guard for approximately 10 years, having enlisted when he was in high school. I didn't realize he was in for 10 years. Like 10 years of your early adult life that you've committed to the country, and the country repays you by throwing you, locking you up and throwing away the key, basically, for something you didn't even do. This is just mind-boggling to me. All right. Richard Allen, number two, Richard Allen has a long history of mental illness, having been treated for major depressive disorder and anxiety disorder throughout his life. His mental health condition was corroborated by the records of the IDOC created during his intake process at the Reception Diagnostic Center, and again through the records created by his assigned mental health providers at the prison, as well as the independent neurological exam results generated by Dr. Polly Westcott. These records were introduced as evidence at various phases during the trial, and therefore the defense requests that the court take judicial notice of the same. The defense would further request that the court acknowledge the legitimacy of his mental health condition in the guilty plea and sentencing order, so the IDOC is on formal notice of his condition when a determination is made as to how and where to confine Mr. Allen while his appeal pens. Conclusion: Richard Allen maintains his innocence and looks forward to the appellate process, which he anticipates will include adjudication by a neutral, detached, and unbiased tribunal. I think that was throwing a little shade at Judge Gall there. Richard Allen believes that he will be afforded due process under the law and will be permitted to present a full, excuse me, and complete defense at a future trial in this cause. Of course, my throat is getting dry here. For that reason, as well as all other reasons identified herein, Richard Allen chose not to participate in the pre-sentence process. Hold on, I got a cough. Sorry, I hate when this sneaks up on you. All right, so he chose not to participate in the pre-sentence process. Number two, he will not be presenting evidence at the sentencing hearing outside of his memorandum. And three, his attorneys will be speaking and articulating arguments in minimal fashion during the sentencing hearing. Respectfully, Andrew Baldwin. Okay, so we know where he stands. He does not agree, he maintains his innocence, and he's going to appeal, which, yeah, I mean, he has some good arguments for appeal in this case. All right, so let's move on to sentencing order or judgment of the court. So this was a handwritten, not only is she the most evil and vile creature on the planet, but she's also very lazy because she just did a handwritten order, and it took me a couple tries to figure out what some of these words are, and I might have forgotten, so just bear with me as I read through this horrible handwriting. All right, so the defendant appears in person and with counsel state by DA and DPAs. I'm assuming that's what that says. Having been found guilty, following a trial by jury, sentencing hearing is held. The court, having considered the pre-sentence investigation report, the sentencing memorandum, hold on, my dog. The pre-sentence investigation report, the sentencing memorandum submitted by counsel, the argument, what does that say? The agents of counsel or arguments of counsel, probably arguments. I have no idea. And having heard and considered the evidence at trial, now finds the defendant guilty of M in count 3 and M in count 4. So she got rid of the felony counts 1 and 2, and they are just M counts. All right. So, court finds with aggravating circumstances the nature and circumstances of the crimes, multiple victims, extraordinary impact on the families of the victims. Court finds as mitigating circumstances the lack of criminal history and defendant's mental health history, although the court finds no nexus to the crimes committed. So she loves that term, no nexus. The court finds no nexus. She's something else. Defendant ordered committed to the Department of Correction for a period of 65 years on count 3, 65 years on count 4 consecutive, so 130 years, something sentence, 786 days jail credit. So that's how long he's been in so far. Public defender fee of $200 assessed with court costs. Defendant advised of his rights to appeal, and in a case he wishes to appeal the convictions and sentences but cannot afford counsel, court appointed the state public defender to timely perfect an appeal on defendant's behalf. Gag order now lifted as the case is concluded in the trial court. Convictions on counts 1 and 2 vacated on double jeopardy grounds. So he cannot be retried on the uh, felony M counts. So that is a good thing, at least. And here is the judgment, which, as you can see, it just says vacated for counts 1 and 2, and then finding of guilty for, I can zoom this in a little bit, sorry. All right, so counts 1 and 2 here are vacated, as you can see, and then counts 3 and 4, they found him guilty. 65 years, 60 for each count, so 65 consecutive, and good time credit. This only says 200. Oh, accrued time 786. Good time credit. So that's a credit he gets for the time that he's been good so far. So there you have it, signed by Gull, and he got 130 years for a crime he didn't commit. So let's kind of switch gears here. This is the um, impact statement, the victim impact statement from the mother of Libby. Carrie Timmons is her name. So this is her. Her and Mike Patty both shared their impact statements with news outlets. So we actually have copies of them. So I'm going to read through them here. So this is from, again, this is Libby's mother, her actual mother. Oftentimes in the news you see, what is her name? Becky Patty. Sorry, I couldn't think of her. She's got the short hair, and yeah, she's the blue eyes, blonde hair. She is often the one seen talking about Libby, which is all very strange. And so Libby was living with the father, who was living at home with the Patties. So Libby was living in the household with the grandmother and not Carrie, the mother, Carrie Timmons, who we're going to hear from in a second. So that's how it gets a little, like, weird there. But still, Carrie is the mother, but yet we hear from the grandma all the time, which is bizarre. All right, so let's read through this. Your Honor, I've struggled for weeks over writing this because I honestly am not sure how to explain the path of destruction left in the wake of the decisions made by Richard Allen on February 13th, 2017. I want to keep in mind these are victims, they're family members of the victims whose lives were taken that day, and while they might believe that Richard Allen is actually guilty, vast majority of people who have been following this case and who have some common sense and have a brain can figure that Richard Allen was the fall guy. And he even said, I don't want to be the fall guy. And that's exactly what he is. Um, so that's my opinion, and I'm allowed to have that opinion. This is their opinion that Richard Allen is guilty. So we're going to read it just in their words and try to have some compassion. But also, we can this isn't a channel where we have to be like super compassionate about victims because, just because you're a victim doesn't mean that you get a free pass to be a jerk. So, or a free pass to whatever. So, I'm going to, we're going to still evaluate it as objectively as possible. All right, so I've struggled for weeks over writing this because I am honestly not sure how to explain the path of destruction left in the wake of the decisions made by Richard Allen on February 13th, 2017. That day changed all of our lives in so many ways, forever. Libby was always my go to for advice. She somehow would have known exactly what to say in the situation, and I have no doubt that she is currently holding my pen. I had no problem getting the word out when he was just bridge guy and had not been identified. But I honestly don't know how to process the fact that a husband and father is capable of the horrendous acts of brutality inflicted upon our beautiful children. I was totally blind to the fact that such evil actually existed. I don't know which is worse, knowing or not knowing. The last 2,867 days as of 12/20 have been absolute hell for Libby and Abby's friends and family. Next week, we should be celebrating our birthdays together, the 25th and the 27th. Libby would be 22. Wow, she would have turned 22 this past week or so on the either the 25th or the 27th. She would be here. I quit celebrating after her 14th and my 39th. I can't help but to see her grin at that, understanding the anxiety that she knew I had about turning the dreaded 40. Okay, you make it a joke about yourself? That's real funny. Hmm. As Libby's mom, keep my opinion to myself. As Libby's mom, I am left with so many what ifs. I'm left without memories of her growing up, getting her driver's license and first car, her first job. She didn't get to graduate and go on to college. We were cheated out of seeing her be the best auntie. She didn't get to fall in love and get married and have babies. She was robbed of the opportunity to experience life and fulfill all of the dreams and aspirations she already had at such a young age. I can't even put into words what it feels like to see other parents and their children get those things. For their lives to go on makes no sense to me. I shouldn't be jealous of them, but I am. I can't understand how life managed to go on for everyone else while mine stopped. Instead of those memories and milestones, I am left with a massive grief, a literal hole in my soul. Broken relationships, shattered hearts, and broken dreams. I struggle daily with guilt, crippling anxiety, complex PTSD, and severe depression. But I have continued to persevere. Hold on. To persevere in a world that I don't want to live in without her. My daughters are robbed of their big sister, their childhood, their innocence, and life as they knew it. They had to grow up through so much turmoil. Alexis turned 11 just 3 days after her sister's body was found on my grandmother's birthday. Birthdays are hard around here. I'll never understand how he was able to get away with it for so long. How can such evil hide in plain sight? Continuing to walk down streets lined with his picture, making a mockery of law enforcement and families, the community, and especially Libby and Abby for nearly 6 years. Who's making a mockery? Who's making a mockery out of them? What? How? In what way? For 6 years? Because he's just walking around in plain sight and making a mockery. He didn't do it, but okay. But somehow he's making a mockery out of something. I don't know, just from being there. All right, so only Richard Allen can answer or has those answers. He has claimed remorse and a need to apologize. Remember that was when he was high on loop-de-loo drugs that made him go, you know, detached from his body basically. He didn't know what the heck he was saying, and who knows what people were saying in his ear trying to get him to say certain things. But he wrote in a very disorganized handwriting that didn't even like it wasn't even like a straight line. It was like all over the place where he said that he wanted to confess or wanted them to know how sorry he was or something like that to the families. But this was after months of being in solitary, so we don't know that that was not planted thoughts and things. Anyways, so only Richard Allen has those answers. He has claimed remorse and a need to apologize. I won't hold my breath waiting, but I do deserve those answers. Libby and Abby deserve the whole truth to come out, and I am all ears. While there will never really be justice or closure, and nothing will bring my daughter back, I am so very proud of her for not only exposing her and Abby's KILLer, but also bringing much needed attention to so many cases near and far. What? Let's read that again. While there will never really be justice or closure, so she's agreed that there's not justice in this case, um, and nothing will bring my daughter back, I am so very proud of her for not only exposing her and Abby's perpetrator, but also bringing much needed attention to so many cases near and far. How? This is okay. This tragedy hasn't completely stopped Libby from accomplishing at least one dream from beyond the grave. Her courage and strength will live on as she guides us through this lifetime until we meet again. She is my sunshine. I don't want to be too critical because she is the mother, but there's some things in here that I find highly problematic. And to me, it just seems like she didn't care or listen to the evidence at trial because otherwise she might be saying something else. But I get it. You're biased. You have some kind of skin in the game by um, wanting to know if this person's going to get committed for the rest of their life or not. So I don't know. I don't know where to begin or where to start. So I probably should just be nice. But exposing and bringing much needed attention to cases near and far. How so? What have they done? Okay, they took a video on their phone, which every little 14-year-old girl does if they have a phone. She took videos on her phone, and that makes her a hero to some people, apparently. And I don't even believe that the bridge guy, now that we know bridge guy was like so far off in the distance that you couldn't even see him on the screen. And the video that we have seen of bridge guy is altered, modified in some way so we could see him. I find that very problematic, and I can't even they didn't even they didn't even make Bridge Guy their guy. Like they didn't even show us and prove how Bridge Guy is the one that committed these crimes. And yet we're just supposed to believe that this was Bridge Guy. Alan is Bridge Guy, and ugh, God, this makes me so angry. Justice was not served in this case. All right, so this is Mike Patty's impact statement. I'm going to read it. Honorable Judge Fran Gull, we appreciate your excuse me, your firm, fair guidance and direction, your ability to thwart off all the unnecessary noise and acts that were deployed during this process. Thank you for standing firm and staying focused on what needed to be done. I request you provide the maximum sentence allowed by our justice system, and whatever the sentence is, would also have no possibility of parole. Do you if you are like invested in a case because let's say there's a defendant that you think is guilty of harming one of your family members, wouldn't you know everything there is to know about this case and then some? Like at this point in time, wouldn't you be like, can you sentence him to the maximum 130 years because blah 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 blah? Like I would go out and I would find that information. I would be like, don't let this person out. But no, they don't know. They haven't been paying attention to the evidence. They're just like, whatever the sentence is, just, give that to him. I just find it baffling that in the Karen Reed case, as the O'Keefe family sat there idly and watched the Commonwealth make absolute and utter fools of themselves and law enforcement and everybody else. And yet the O'Keefes still walked away believing, oh yeah, Karen's guilty. Really? So, like, it bothers me when victims can't be a little more objective when it comes to um, cases. And I know it's difficult, especially, it's hard to parse through um, the emotion versus the proceedings. But I would love it if victims would, have a little more knowledge about the law and things like that. It would be great. Just be a little more knowledgeable about the case too. All right. So, anyways, he says, with no possibility of parole, there is no parole available to our girls. For this, I will never forget. And then this was for the jury, but the jury was not there. So he didn't read it, but let's just read what he said. We appreciate your time spent here and being away from your families. You've had to see and hear things in our society should not be so. But unfortunately, due to the acts of the convict, what needed to be done. Bad speller too. All right, so being able to absorb and look at things objectively through an unfiltered lens and delivering the verdict. Thank you. For this, I will not forget. Prosecution. We appreciate your willingness to stay on task, putting in numerous hours, putting this case above many of your personal needs. The result speaks for itself, but wanted to share our deepest gratitude. For this, I will never forget. I sense a theme. Investigation team, we appreciate your determination and grit to stay on this for so many years. I have observed from the outside while you investigated so many tips that many have no idea about, all to deliver proof and get to the bottom of this case. Never once did I hear we are out of options. There was always a full court press to bring justice in this case. For this, I will not forget. Family. I am so blessed to have such a loving and welcoming family. Only wish I could have prevented any of this from happening and wish I could have protected everyone from having to go through this. This almost sounds like a guilt confession. I am so blessed to have such a loving and welcoming family. Only wish I could have prevented any of this from happening, and I wish I could have protected everyone from having to go through this. Our family is strong, and we will march forward and continue to grow. For this, I am grateful. The defense. Check this out, okay, guys? I understand the role you needed to play, but I cannot connect the ways of our legal system to allow so many things to interfere with the truth and facts to simply be brought before a jury. Really? Like they weren't even allowed to talk about half the crap that they wanted to, but yet, whatever. Um, I cannot imagine our forefathers ever envisioned the attempts to suppress and divert the facts would ever be part of our justice system. One should reflect and review their position to support truth, justice, and the American way. Okay. Your ineptability to protect some of the most personal facts in this case, the crime scene photos. Okay, okay, okay. Let's stop right there because this whole crime scene photo leak has been put to this whole question of it has been put to bed because in what I'm going to have for future episodes for you is going to be Jerry Holman's press tour, his media tour that he goes on. He does some interviews and basically admits that there were leaks before the defense were ever accused, I think, falsely of leaking. And I also kind of think that someone may have put someone up to leaking those photos from the office or stealing the photos from the office. But, anyways, that's a whole nother story. So he's saying their ineptability to protect that evidence in the crime scene photos and making statements that you really didn't care they were out there. What? Statements that you didn't care that were out there? My family will forever have to explain how these are available to for people to search. Who cares? I don't care about your family. Honestly, if I'm protecting my client, I don't care about your family. I'm sorry that you're hurting, but I'm trying to protect my family and or my client, and everything that I say is to get my client the best, most effective and fair trial that they can have. So the feelings of the family don't matter. I'm sorry, but they just don't. They really don't. In the criminal justice system, they don't matter, and that's why it's supposed to be this way. I mean, the emotion is not supposed to be part of it. And that's why we're supposed to have two fair sides, but it's usually not that fair. All right. And making my statements that you really didn't need. Okay. Family will have to explain what do I say to my kids, grandchildren, grandchildren? What will you tell your grandkids? I hope you tell them the truth. I surely will. For this, I will never forget. Yeah, the truth is the state railroaded Richard Allen and somebody else did it. And I think there's a lot of people involved from this little town that might have some satanic um baby liking type individuals that are in the neighborhood there. We already know that there are Odinists or whatever you want to call them, which is basically just another name for the those people that, how do I say without getting banned? Um, Basically skinheads. I don't want to say that, but that is what Odinists are. It's a racist, sometimes satanic type um group of individuals that, yeah, they're just doing their own thing. And that's who I think is really responsible. And it's even, I don't want to say this, but I'm just going to say it. It is even possible family members were involved. And I don't want to, I mean, allegedly. I'm not saying, I'm not putting it out there at all or saying anybody specifically, but I'm just saying there might have been people involved that usually it is a family member that takes the life of someone else. So oftentimes, if you're looking for a stranger, you're looking in the wrong spot. And that is what I think we have here. All right, so this is what Mike Patty, grandfather of Libby. I don't know if I mentioned that. Sorry. Mike and Becky Patty are married. Mike is the stepdad of Libby. He says, I will never understand how you, he says this to the convict, to Richard Allen. I will never understand how you could have conducted such an atrocity. You KILL'd my granddaughter nearly 8 years ago and have only thought of yourself. Your attempts of self preservation are a result of how you really are. Once you committed this crime, you could have been a man, stood up, and taken accountability, but you didn't. At any time, yeah, because I'm going to take accountability for a crime I didn't commit. At any time during these proceedings, you could have stood up and taken responsibility, but you didn't, and were only concerned about yourself and tried to get away with them. Actions always speak louder than words. By being so selfish, you continued to punish and hurt my family. For this, I will never forget. Your act of has tested my faith. I am still not ready to provide forgiveness. When I am able to, it will be for my own faith and conscience, not yours. For this, I will never forget. I have never felt such hatred and should not be this way towards another human being. What you have done has impacted so many people's lives. We will heal with the help of our pastor. I am lucky to have a great father and a great family, and will enjoy the rest of my life helping and watching all of them grow from our kids to our great grandchildren. This is something you will not get to take away, and you will never get to experience such joy and love as what my family has. Lastly, hope the rest of your days are spent in as much fear as the girls had to experience the last part of their lives, and hope those moments haunt you the rest of your days. You deserve no better. Now is the time to stand up and take accountability, put a stop to any future attempts to appeal, so we can let Libby rest in peace. Mike Petty, grandfather of Liberty German. He is basically telling Richard Allen, don't appeal. Just put an end to it right now and stop all of this stuff, all of this court stuff, and just say, I did it. And then you don't have to appeal. That's not how it works, Mike Patty, but okay. And you have no say as to his being able to appeal. And it's a good thing because you shouldn't. Ay, ay, ay. Some people just really don't understand basic stuff, I think. Or maybe he's hiding something. I don't know. I don't know. All right, so we're going to read up next the defendant's motion to preserve evidence. Defendant Richard Allen by counsel Andrew Baldwin respectfully requests that this court order the state, including any law enforcement agency holding evidence in the above captioned cause, to preserve all evidence for possible future testing, inspection, or admission at a hearing. This request is being made pursuant to the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 12 of the Indiana Constitution. Number 2, preserve all documents related to the jury veneer in this cause, including but not limited to the unredacted versions of the jury questionnaires. This request is being made pursuant to Indiana Jury Rule 10, which excludes jury questionnaires from being publicly accessible, but contains no limitation on the party's right to obtain juror information. And then it's signed by Andrew Baldwin, and the evil witch that she is, she came back with her order and says this: Trial counsel's motion to preserve evidence reviewed. Counsel's request to preserve all evidence is vague and therefore denied. What is vague about all? That's not vague. That's all. That's everything. All of it. So she's just being a witch to be a witch. She actually denied that for his appeal. She actually denied evidence being preserved because she's an evil woman. All right, so counsel's request to preserve all documents related to the jury is granted, so that they don't have to worry about. The jury will, or the court will retain the records pursuant to jury rules. And one other thing, this was actually granted at the sentencing hearing, but this is the motion to refer the state public defender for appointment of appellate counsel. Richard Allen, by counsel, moves this court to refer this case to the state public defender for appointment of direct appeal counsel. In support of the motion, defendant Allen states the following. Defendant Allen anticipates that subsequent to the sentencing hearing scheduled on December 20th, he will file a notice of appeal with the Indiana Court of Appeals. Number two, Carroll County's Comprehensive Plan for Indigent Defense Services permits this court to refer the case to the State Public Defender's Office for appointment of counsel if an attorney is not qualified or available, or if referral to the State Public Defender would be in the interest of justice. Failure to follow the county's comprehensive plan for appointment of counsel jeopardizes the 40% reimbursement the county receives for indigent defense. Number four, defendant Allen's trial counsel believes that no individual appellate attorney will be able to manage the volume of information in this case under the tight deadlines required by the Indiana Rules of Appellate Procedure. Trial counsel further believes that it is in the interest of judicial economy that this court facilitate the appointment of multiple appellate lawyers to prosecute defendant Allen's appeal within a reasonable time and to further avoid the possibility of lengthy continuances and delays, which would most certainly result from the appointment of any one attorney to handle his appeal. 5. The state public defender has a carefully curated list of appellate attorneys who have handled complex cases with large records on appeal, as this case will be. 6. The state public defender can consult attorneys on her list who are qualified and can work together on the appeal to ensure the deadlines are met and to ensure that the appeal is processed with efficiency and in the interest of judicial economy. Number 7, a referral to the state public defender's office will also promote a more neutral and detached appointment of appellate counsel so as to avoid any sense of impropriety that might otherwise be associated with the appointment of local counsel in or near Carroll County or counsel in the Allen County, where hearings had been previously scheduled and conducted in this case. And 8, referring defendant Allen's case to the state public defender for appointment of appellate counsel is in the interest of justice. So she did say in her sentencing something about that, and then now I lost it. I don't know. It said something in here about assigning court appointed the state public defender. So she did appoint a public defender, just one at this point that we know of, but perhaps she might do more. I'm not really sure. It doesn't that's all it says. This court appointed the state public defender to timely perfect an appeal. To timely perfect an appeal on defendant's behalf. So that's about all we know right now. All right, so first up, we'll go over the press conference. It's about 20 minutes. I'll let that play out, probably as at the end here. But I was going to talk a little bit. There's a few things that I had found that I thought were worth mentioning. So this, geez, it's small. Let me zoom in on that. So this is a post on X by someone named Dahlia West, and she says, "It's over. I can finally talk about it now. My mom caught the Delphi, K-I-double-L-R, although she spelled it with 3 L's, I think. She has lived in Carroll County, her mother has lived in Carroll County her entire life. She came out of retirement as a CA investigator of 40 plus years to volunteer unpaid to do anything she could to help. She was tasked with going through the files and files of years' worth of paperwork and found him through due diligence and her unwavering resolve to help the children of Carroll County. She will never make any kind of public statement about it, but she lasted 40 years in a job where most people quit before 10. And even after she retired, she still felt called to help in some small way. She never gave up. She did what little she could do. She showed up every week for 8 years to do whatever she needed, from sweeping the floors to baking cookies for the FBI to putting tips into the database. She never asked for a thank you, but I think she deserves it. And then she says, LOL, my mom is a Virgo, eternally dedicated to practicality and usefulness. You thought she would be fooled by your little flattery attempt. Can you give us an autograph? How about a statement? My mom is a shark. She'll eat your lunch. This says, somebody sent this message to the mom. Says, would you believe someone from Atlanta who works with Nancy Grace wanted my autograph today? Everyone has been so complimentary. Even the M Sheet podcast people told me, good job. Needless to say, I just say thank you. No autographs. And then she says, my mom has more cumulative courtroom experience than the judge and all the lawyers combined. She hadn't been inside a courtroom in more than 10 years since she retired, but I was never worried. So this is a communication between her and her mom. And who's the gray? Just sprang it on me. Just sprang it on me that I am testifying. So this is mom in the gray. Just sprang it on me that I am testifying late this afternoon. I am sure M Sheet will be reporting on it tonight. I hope I can make an impact on the jury. Justice is the ultimate goal. So she's worried about, that's the second time she's talked about the M Sheet, the podcast that had all the leaks and things. Really? You're going to tell me that that was Richard Allen? No, I don't think so. Because the M Sheet has been pro state the whole time. They've always felt that Allen was guilty. Um, so yeah, this is the second time she mentions them, and she's wondering if it's going to be reported on. So you could tell she's looking, she's enjoying the limelight here. And then the daughter says, you'll do great. No one is better prepared than you. You've got this. Mom says, thanks for the vote of confidence. She says, just stay relaxed, keep eye contact with the jury. You're a shark. And she says, they set me back until tomorrow at 9. And then Dahlia West, ex-user Dahlia West, says, I never even knew until her official testimony that my mom was the one who caught him, meaning Richard Allen. This is not my family's first gag order rodeo. In 40 plus years as a CA investigator, my mom never once discussed a case she had, and I would never insult her by asking about it. But yet she's talking about it with you, and the M Sheet, and whether she'll be on it or not after she testifies. Aye, aye, aye. Good. Give yourself away in your interviews and your social media. We'll take it. Expose yourselves, all of you dirty people. All right, so this is going to be a very brief interview with Kathy Shank, who, let's do that. This is Kathy Shank, the one that found the tip that supposedly, this is why this is important. This woman, Kathy Shank, is the one that found the tip. And in the press conference, they talk about it and how she was so critical and important that they basically kissed her butt multiple times about it in the press conference because she found the tip that put Richard Allen away. The tip that had been sitting in a file for years and all of a sudden just popped right out at her. So let's hear what she's got to say to WRTV Indianapolis.
Obviously, in the trial, I heard your testimony and the passion, the time, and I hear everybody else talking about the time, and even you being so humble, like this is a team effort,
Absolutely.
What was it like for you to be a part of this? I mean, obviously, you talked about it in trial, about how you came back and you wanted to volunteer. Why was that so important?
I had worked with law enforcement my entire adult career for 40 years through Department of Child Services, through Child Protection, and I knew several of the law enforcement officers, the prosecutor at the time, Rob Ives, and when I learned of this, I contacted Rob and said I'd like to help.
And that is exactly what you did. I mean, so much. Your role, obviously, we know from your testimony, helping file and organize and do all the things that need to be done in order for an investigation to kind of stay organized, if you will, the organizational side of things. When you were moving offices and you opened up that drawer and you came across this box, what went through your mind? And where, obviously, we know where it ended, but what went through your mind?
When I found that, I realized that I had not heard of this person.
When they found that, what did you find? What is the tip? They still have not told us what the tip is. It's just that, oh, she found this tip that put him away. Well, what's the tip? She just said, well, when I found that, you see how vague they are when they talk about this particular tip? What's the tip? They don't tell us.
And I went to the file drawer and found the actual file for Richard Allen Whiteman at that time, as it had been written. And I read the report that Dan Doolin had made after he had spoken with him. And I, as being an investigator, I had looked at some of the statements from the girls that said they had seen a person out at the bridge. And basically, I put the two and two together, took it to Tony, and we went from there.
Outside of this, you're a member of this community for so long.
Absolutely, my entire life, yes.
What does it mean to you to be able to see all of this come to where we are today? One, Miss Fogg report, if you will, leads to all these years of work being able to pile together. We talk a lot about all the evidence just was able to stack up. And then the final pieces of this is the guy. What is it like for you to see not only the guilty verdict on that day last month, but today to hear the sentence of 130 years?
The justice has been served. I mean, there was an amazing team that worked on this. I mean, Jerry and all of the state police and all the other agencies, and I have such high regard. And I guess what I can best say is I got back a lot more than I ever gave.
Obviously, you hear all these people talking about you, every person calling you out, thanking you.
It's very humbling, very humbling. I did it because I like to serve. I like to help people, and that's what I did.
And right place, right time, right?
I guess I basically call it divine intervention.
Yeah, you were just there, open that drawer, you just so happened to be the person. Finally, last thing. Obviously, it went so long, so many people. I mean, 8 years almost that you're, this community. Like, please, we have all these things. We have video evidence of this suspect, and we still don't have the person. What was that like for you to be able to see law enforcement and investigators kind of finish putting that puzzle together after waiting for so long?
It was amazing, and it was. And I think I told Jerry.
I still can't believe, media doesn't push back. Why aren't they asking questions? Hard questions about this. They just kiss people's butts when they do interviews. They don't actually ask the stuff we want to hear. It's so stupid.
It was a well-oiled machine. I couldn't believe I had worked up to the arrest in my former profession, but I had never seen this, and it was amazing what they did. And they just went into action and did what needed to be done, and here we are today.
Obviously, in the trial.
Oops, started over. Yeah, so that's the end of her interview. But isn't that interesting? She just, yeah, something about her I don't like. Can't put my finger on it, but anyways. So there was also, where'd it go? I'm missing a tab here. I had a tab. It was telling me more about Kathy. What the heck? Basically, there was a reward for finding the Delphi perpetrator, and the reward is going to be turned over to this Kathy Shank now, and it's like a $300,000 reward or like 200. I can't remember now. That's why I had the tab and it's missing for some reason. But it's a several $100,000 reward. Let's say a couple 100,000, and she is going to dedicate it to the softball field. Remember the softball field that was put up in the park that was put up in memorial for the girls? She's donating it to that, which, okay, I get. Yeah, great, nice. I think this is prearranged. I don't think she actually was going to ever receive any money. I think that they are crooked as hell. It's a money laundering something or other. And these people are taking that reward money that they had set aside, this county, and they're going to use it to build the Abby and Libby, or build more, or whatever, maintain the Abby and Libby softball field, which I feel like I don't think Kathy Shank had really been given the money or would have been given the money. I think it's a just a ruse, but that's my opinion. Anyways, another thing that I had found interesting here is all the taxpayer dollars. We've been talking about that a little bit, so I'm going to read this Fox 59 um, article written by Max Lewis. We used him for some of his tweeting that he had done during the um, let me switch. Hold on. Um, he had, what was I saying? Max Lewis. He was the one that we used as a resource sometimes for recounting what had happened back in the courtroom because there were no cameras. So he had been attending and updating us. So we are familiar with him. All right. So he says in this article titled Delphi Murders Trial Cost Taxpayers 2.5 million and counting. And we know he's going to appeal and he might likely get a new trial because of all the atrocities that were done to him. He might actually just get, here you go, nothing. You're free and here's a bunch of money and don't sue us. Delphi, Indiana, a report from the Carroll County Auditor revealed that the Delphi homicides trial has cost taxpayers more than 2.5 million, and that number is likely to go up even more. In total, Carroll County has written checks totaling 2.5. I'm not even going to read all that for everything associated. You can see right here, I'm going to highlight it. For everything associated with the trial, which includes prosecution costs, defense costs, jury expenses, and courthouse security. It's a very high bill for a trial, but not necessarily for this trial, defense attorney John Tompkins said. Because Richard Allen was appointed counsel, his defense team's bills are paid for by the county. The report shows Allen's defense has cost taxpayers 1.297. About half of that expense was for three defense attorneys. Remember, he had all three of them, so that they were paid $620K. Lead attorney Andrew Baldwin and his firm Baldwin, Perry and Wiley have been paid the most, with the county shelling out nearly $343K. Attorney Brad Rosie and his firm Hillis, Rosie and Dean have been paid a little over 200K, sorry, while attorney Jennifer Auger has received nearly 120K. The defense team also spent just over 107K on expert witnesses, which included a firearms expert, a clinical psychologist, and an expert on solitary confinement. The bills associated with taking care of the jury are also listed on the defense's expense report. Why would that be? The jury was sequestered for the entire trial, which means the county is on the hook for their hotels and meals. The report shows taking care of the jury cost nearly 232K, which includes nearly 160K for their hotel stay. Jeez, Lou, that's a lot. Prosecutor Nicholas McClelland spent far less than the defense team on the trial. However, the prosecution's expenses do not include the cost of the police investigators who worked on the case. Although the prosecution spent just over $447,000, with most of that being spent on attorney's fees, those fees totaled just over $306K, with Special Prosecutor James Luttrell being paid nearly $140K and prosecutor Stacy Diener 900 or 97K. Where's whatchamacallit? They didn't list Nick McClellan. Why not? Prosecution also had to pay nearly 13K to the Indiana Department of Corrections for housing Richard Allen. One of the biggest expenses for the county was courthouse security, which cost over 814K because the cops who do the security charge overtime for some reason, and that is a big old scam that happens everywhere, and we've seen it in Canton and we're seeing it in Delphi too. That included more than 24K for the metal detectors, nearly 6K for fencing and barricades, and just under 720K for extra officers to secure the building. Tompkins said the cost of the trial rivals the costs associated with a DP case, so a D penalty case, which are some of the most expensive. However, he said it's necessary for everyone to get a fair shake. This wasn't a DP case, so fortunately, otherwise Judge Gold would have sent him to his demise. Put yourself in Russia today. Put yourself in Syria today. Put yourself in any of the places that they are not willing to spend what it takes to be fair to both sides, Tompkins said. Then ask yourself, would I rather live there? I'm pretty sure your answer is no. So they spent so much on the defense, yet the defense still didn't even get a fair trial, which I find just crazy. All right, I'm done reading that. If there's a spreadsheet and you can go through all the prosecutor and the defense expenses on this particular in this particular article here, which was again Fox 59, Max Lewis. All right, moving on. What is the? I lost all my tabs. Hold on. What is this? All right, I don't know what happened. I can't find the tab that I had for some reason. So it was a clip of Patrick Westphal talking. So Patrick Westphal was one of the individuals who was named in the Franks memo, and he was a friend of Brad Holder, him and Elvis Fields and all them, the Odinists, you know. So Patrick Westphal was doing some kind of interview. He's done lots of interviews. You can find clips of him like all over the internet. He's done some clips or interviews with people online. But so Patrick Westphal, he was saying something about they were still like getting his DNA, even though they had Richard Allen in custody. This was, sometime after Allen was in custody, and they were coming back and, backtracking and going and asking Westphal for DNA samples, which is, if you've got your guy, then why are you asking for this other guy's samples? You know what I'm saying? So I think that maybe the Franks memo made them go and do such testing, and probably hiding still what those results are because they're not good for the state, for the state's case. All right, so let's get to, do I have this sped up? I have it on 1.25. Okay. This is the press conference. I'm going to just probably let it play out. I won't, well, I might talk a little because they're going to irritate me, but here we go. We're already 1:15 in, so I'll try to be brief.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Piers with Indiana State Police. I'd like to thank you all for being here today and for your continued cooperation throughout the course of this trial. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to the Canal Center for allowing us to use their facility today. As we move forward, we remain committed to keeping Abigail Williams and Liberty German at the center of our focus. Their memory has guided us every step of the investigation, and the photo displayed behind us serves as a powerful reminder of why we're here and what this case has always been about. Due to the gag order, it has been some time since we have spoke publicly about this case. Now that the order has been lifted, we are grateful to be here today and speak to all of you. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce to you the speakers: Mike Patty from the families, Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, and Carroll County Prosecutor Nick McClelland. At the conclusion of their remarks, Prosecutor McClelland will take a limited number of questions, and he has requested that all questions be directed to him. On behalf of those standing behind me here today, and all those who have dedicated countless hours into this investigation, we thank you all for your continued support. I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Mike Patty.
So just to remind you, this is the press conference that took place after the sentencing hearing. So it's also kind of weird that they did a press conference after the sentencing hearing, but just listen to what law enforcement people have to say. It's going to be weird. And Mike Patty too, but just watch people's mannerisms and just, yeah, use your brains as you listen to some of the ridiculous things that these people say. They should be glad.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Like, not happy, not rejoicing, but they should be glad that, they feel like justice was done. But that's not exactly how they feel in this case.
I don't have a nice speech all prepared. It was kind of a last minute thing here, but I really wanted to take the time to send out my appreciation that justice has been served for the girls. I want to thank the jurors. I hope they get a chance to see this, that they took time out of their lives and remained open-minded and objective and was able to look at the information and deliver a verdict. For that, I will always be grateful. The community. This community has embraced our families from day one and continues to lift us up and support us. And again, for that, I'll always be grateful. I want to thank them. To the investigative team and the prosecution, thank you for staying steadfast and continuing to work towards this. It's been almost 8 years coming. If I live to make it 80, it'll almost be 10% of my life that's been spent working on this. And to the judge, I want to thank her as well for her steadfast, staying on course, staying on track, and helping us get through this. Thank you very much. Tony.
Good morning. The end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017 completely changed the fabric of Carroll County. We lost 6 beautiful young girls.
Sheriff Liggett.
And all of that happened within a 6-month time span. My office is not a part of the investigation into the Flora fires. That's being headed up by the state police. We would do anything that they would ask for us to do, and I know they're working extremely hard on that case as well. Carroll County is a tight-knit community, about 20,000 people. It used to be a place where people didn't lock their doors. I believe that the verdict and the sentencing will help ease some of that sense of security for the people of Carroll County. The people who live here are very resilient. I think you can see that just in the families, the Germans, the Patties, the Williams. Carroll County is an amazing place to live, to work, to raise your family. I want to thank all of the people of Carroll County and the families for their patience during this investigation. I keep hearing the word closure. People are coming up to me saying, I bet that you're glad that there's finally closure. There will never be any closure in this case. The Germans and
Because you didn't solve the case, that's why.
the Williams family lost their daughters, their granddaughters, their siblings. Justice, a form of justice was served, but it does not bring Abby or Libby back. These families will live every day without 2 of the most important people in their lives. They're missing milestones because of a low-life coward decided to take their innocent lives. They did not deserve this. Today is not closure. It is just turning the page and starting a new chapter. My heart is and always has been broken for these families. I want them to know that we stand with them, and I want to apologize to them that it took 8 years for us to get to this point. This case was quite the undertaking for the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. There are so many people that put a lot of time in assisting us with bringing it to a conclusion. You see a lot of them right here, and there are many that aren't standing up here. There are so many agencies to thank for standing by our side. Just to give you an idea of the support that we had just for the trial, we had 36 outside agencies help us for just the security during the trial. On the afternoon of February 14th, at least that many came to help us investigate this case. Everyone from detectives down to dispatchers to help investigate or just answer phones. I remember a conversation after we found the girls with Jerry Holman about whether or not we were going to take the case or Indiana State Police were going to take the case. Well, it was not my decision. It was not my decision, but I knew we didn't have the resources needed to do this on our own. Holman made a commitment that if we took the case, ISP wouldn't leave us and they would stand by our side and provide any of those resources that we needed, and they did just that. Tobe Lesenby was the sheriff at the time, and he asked ISP to stand with us. I want to thank Doug Carter and the rest of the Indiana State Police for being with us during this time. The reason justice was served today was due to one person, a person that only knows how to give. She has given herself literally for free to this investigation in different ways since about March of 2017. Kathy Shank, while filing, scanning, organizing, found a tip that led us to be here today. Throughout this investigation, especially when things happened during the month, for things that happened during the month of 2017, that was a time when Kathy was not helping us. When she would come across something that she didn't know, she would always bring that to an investigator. And every time that she brought us something and said, "Did you know this?" we knew it, except for the tip that she brought us that got us here today.
Again, they don't say the tip. They're very vague about the tip, whatever the tip is. She just happened to read through a file and it just jumped out at her. Well, what the heck is it? What is the tip that got him put away?
To borrow a term I believe was started by Becky Patty, a saying that meant enough to me that I had it on a sticker on my computer, in my car, and on my refrigerator at home. The goal was actually to be able to say the words, and they ring true. There is zero doubt that justice has been served, and today is the day. Thank you.
He's the Carroll County Sheriff, Tony Liggett. This is Doug Carter. He's the superintendent for the ISP, the Indiana State Police. And he's been very vocal in this case too. He's said a lot, done a lot of like media interviews and things. And going back and looking at his interviews are quite intriguing just to see his behaviors and some of the things he says.
I had prepared remarks today, but I decided walking in here that I wasn't going to read them. John Perrine reminded me that 2,866 days ago, this entire thing began. I didn't know what I would think, and I didn't realize today we were going to be walking into the same room where many of you were, I believe, in, again, from memory, April of 2019 or that time frame. And over the course of these last many years now, several of us, me included, have been mocked and ostracized for our emotion, for our inability to answer questions that you might ask, and the thought that we're something other than human beings. And I'm not going to apologize for that. I often say I wish people could see what goes on behind the scenes, and not just with people dressed like me, but citizens of this county and of this city. It's amazing, amazing acts of unbelievable courage and self-service and self-sacrifice.
Keep patting yourself on the back there.
I wish you all could have been in the courtroom today and heard the victim impact statements.
You heard some.
I'll always remember them. And I hope you'll get the transcripts and read what was said and try and understand the context of those words, even though you weren't in the courtroom. Over the course of these last many years, there have been many, many, many investigative strategies. Any notion of a cover-up, any notion of us deciding the outcome of this, any notion of any connection to anything else is not correct. It's not correct.
What? Any notion of anything else is not correct? Who's talking about that? Who said anything?
Any notion of a cover-up, any notion of us deciding the outcome of this, any notion of any connection to anything else is not correct.
Cover-up. Any notion of a cover-up, any notion that we had something to do with the outcome of this? Yeah, you guys did. But okay, cool. Keep going.
It's not correct. I've never been a detective in my entire lifetime, but I get to represent some of the best on the planet Earth. And I listened to them intently. And when they made strategy decisions associated with what the next steps would be, my job was to support them, and I stand by those decisions, every single one of them. The gag order. We lived by that. We lived by that gag order. The defense did not.
They lived by the gag order, except they're the ones that leaked the photo in the first place, which I always had a feeling that they did. And now it's kind of coming out that they probably did leak this photo to the Murder Sheet podcast and others out there. But let's blame the defense.
And it cost a human life.
And that is just so low. So they are talking about, what's his name? I want to say Robert Fortson, who it might have been Holman. I can't remember. One of the people from ISP or Unified Command or something was investigating the whole leak from Baldwin's office. And in doing so, he kind of was like pressuring this one guy, and that guy took his life that night. So if anybody has more blame in anything, then it is Holman, I believe, because I believe it was Holman who threatened him. I wish I had the facts.
Anybody that shares those photographs of those two little girls should be held accountable, whether they're in the public sphere, whether they're emailed to you, whether you found them in a place you didn't want them to see. I hope that if you ever see them, you'll picture your own children as
If it gets leaked, there's nothing they can do about it. So sharing them, viewing them, looking at them, it's not illegal. They're just trying to make you think it is, but it's not. They can't do anything about that. Once they're out, they're out. And there's no legal recourse they can take. And I want to say, if you guys recall, you guys that are like my age or older, and I'm going to be aging myself here, but back in the 90s when we had like the OJ case, Cole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman crime scenes, I remember seeing them with my eye, like as a child, seeing them. They were on the news, they ran the newspapers and things like that. Like they were everywhere. So when all of a sudden do we become like, let's not look at crime scene photos? I'm too sensitive for that. When did we all become so sensitive? It drives me crazy. It's one of these things that really drives me crazy. Oh, you can't look at a crime scene photo. Why not? We learn from them. So what? Like, yes, okay, there's people out there that don't want to see it. Fine, I get that. But I can look at a crime scene photo unemotionally and look at the photo and be like, okay, well, there's sticks on those girls and there's puddles of blood there. And, I can look at it and try to educate myself about that particular crime instead of looking at it like I'm somehow, um, I don't know. I don't know. Being insensitive to the parents or family members. What does me seeing it have to do with their sensibilities? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And this whole thing about, well, we got to protect these crime scene photos. We got to keep them sealed. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. And we have to get over it. And I'm just going to say that. And let's move on.
Abby and Libby. I'll never forgive that. I will never, ever forgive that. We lived by the gag order. Documents were released from the defense that drove a public narrative that many of you talked about. And damn it, I wish I could have responded, but I was not going to violate what Judge Ball said. So they were able to get these documents out there and create a public narrative that you and many of you and many others believed around the globe. Baldwin and Rossi are responsible for that, not this team. The family effects, I think you'll see the words that were spoken by the folks that spoke today about their lives and how they've been forever changed, how they'll never be the same. And they said it in ways that were beautiful in some kind of a mysterious way. There's an attorney in Indianapolis by the name of Guy Relford. And I heard Guy on the radio after the verdict when a lot of hate mail came, death threats came. And I heard Guy Relford say that day on the radio, and I called him 15 minutes after he said it. And after 40 years in this business, I never thought about the jury's perspective. But he said the only people that mattered in that courtroom was the jury. And he went on to talk about, he's a very bright attorney. He went on to talk about what they can see that we can't, that you couldn't. They could see the defense. They could see the state. They could see the witnesses, feel the emotion, and they could see Richard Allen. I've never thought about that perspective because we have a singular view most times. You, me, it's human nature. Judge Gall was the keeper of the peace in that courtroom, but the people that mattered were those 12 jurors. And we have a system of justice that allows them to decide the fate of a human being. That's what our founders had established. And that's what they did. I hope you all understand that what you say and how you report matters more than you can ever possibly comprehend. This is an opportunity for us to all learn about what social media is and isn't, what we should do and what we shouldn't.
What
And
is this guy
understand that
talking about? What the hell is this guy talking about? So now it's your responsibility to censor us and what we should and shouldn't do on social media and what we can and can't talk about when it comes to court cases? Get effed. Real hard, buddy.
words have consequences to other human beings. I appreciated Guy's perspective, and it changed my view of the criminal proceeding. Richard Allen knew. We live in a country where people can hate. People can say things about other people. And that's okay. Hate me. It's okay. It's one of the only
I don't hate you, Doug Carter, but I think you're a corrupt piece of shit.
countries in the world where you can. So hate me if you want to. The investigative collaboration is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. There's no way we could possibly chronicle it or articulate it or write about it or anything. There's no way we could ever do that. We are human beings, and there were mistakes made. But there was never a mistake made that we knew was wrong when we did it. I'll crawl across shards of hot glass for Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman is not a liar.
I'll walk through shards of hot glass for Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman, lead investigator in this case, is not a liar, guys. He's not a liar. No matter what anybody thinks, he's not a liar. Nobody said that right out loud just now, but no, he's not a liar. Guys, don't worry. He's telling the truth. We shouldn't worry about his lies.
Jerry Holman gave the last 8 years of his life to something much greater than himself. We fussed with each other throughout the course of this in conclusion. We argued with each other. I remember Tobe and I had an argument right here in this other room in April of 19, as you should expect us to. There was no groupthink. We debated each other, as you should expect us to. But then the defense spins it into incompetence. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous nonsense for Baldwin and Rozzi to have done that.
Yeah, the words that are coming out of your mouth are ridiculous nonsense.
And finally, most importantly, to the Delphi community and to the family of Abby and Libby. Words cannot possibly explain what we all feel. But what Nick McClelland did and the rest of the team that was associated with this, every single time it was about something other than themselves. It was about this community and that family. And we owe them a debt of gratitude that can never possibly be repaid. How about we start to heal now? How about we hit that reset button and understand that justice in this country was served? And if you don't like justice in this country, go to another one.
Justice was served, and if you don't like justice in this country, go to another one. No, thank you. I'm happy living in America where I have the right, the constitutional right, to question law enforcement and politicians and to question why they're doing this, to question whether it's right to frame an innocent man. I have that constitutional right in this country, and I can say, you know what? I don't think that things were on the up and up when these investigators did their investigation, and I think that Richard Allen is innocent. I can think that in this country, and I don't have to go to another country because of my thoughts and my beliefs as to Richard Allen's innocence. Can you believe that? Go to another country. No, thank you, Doug Carter. I will not.
Let's heal. Tone down the rhetoric. Stop all the politics and all the nonsense and all the conspiracy.
Tone down the rhetoric. Listen to him. Listen to him and his words. And he's saying everybody else needs to tone down their rhetoric. Okay,
theories and understand that we all tried the best we could.
we tried the best we could. Okay, well, your best was real shitty. I'll just say that.
That should be the message to us and to our kids and to this most amazing place we call the United States of America. Well done. Thank you all.
Good morning.
Nick McClelland, the lead prosecutor in this case.
Can we all just have a little bit of a sigh of relief that this thing is over finally? The convictions come in. We've got the verdict. We got the sentence, 130 years in the Department of Corrections. And while I don't think ever this verdict or this conviction will ever bring peace to the family, I hope that they can take this sigh of relief with me to say that this part of the trial is over, that we got the conviction, that we got the sentence that brings justice for Abby and Libby.
And that's all you wanted, was to get the conviction, that's for sure.
A few of the things I am going to say are going to echo what Sheriff Leggett said, what Superintendent Carter said, and what Mike Patty said. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank some people along the way. Law enforcement, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, Indiana State Police, Department of Natural Resources, all the agencies that assisted in this investigation and the prosecution of the defendant, I want to thank. They were attacked by members on the internet for their integrity. They were called corrupt.
Yep.
They were called evil.
Yep.
And they were called liars.
Yep.
And they weathered that storm with professionalism
Did
and
they?
did what they could
Did they though? Because Doug Carter's over here telling us go to another country.
to be a shield for the families. Spent countless hours chasing down leaks of crime scene photos, countless hours attempting to scrub the internet of those crime scene photos, and countless hours trying to protect the family as best as they could. And so to them, ISP, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, DNR, the other agencies that assisted, thank you. We would not be here today if it were not for your efforts and your countless hours that you sacrificed away from your family and your friends to give us the evidence that we needed to get the conviction. I want to thank my team, Stacy Diener, James Luttrell. There is no way I could have tried this case without them. We spent countless hours working on this case, away from our families, away from our friends, and no one will understand the heart and the effort that they poured into this. So thank you. I want to thank Kathy Shank. She kept us well fed. She was the grandmother of our office, if you will. She made sure that whatever we needed, she took care of, and she never complained. And without her, we would not be here. Without her countless hours of going over filings, of scanning in documents, of looking at reports, and having the wherewithal to bring this to the attention of Sheriff Leggett, to say, hey, I haven't seen this before. Has anybody followed up with this person? Without her, we would not be here. Without her, we would not have an arrest.
That somebody didn't follow up on this person. They did follow up on Richard Allen. They interviewed him early on, and they basically didn't do anything because believe he was cleared. He didn't do anything. He didn't have any information for them. But 7 years later, Kathy Shank just happens to find a file and goes, oh, look, he's guilty.
Arrest, a conviction, and a sentence. She was the key part to this investigation. The needle in the haystack, if you will, that brought this investigation to a close to where we could make an arrest. Kathy Shank, I thank you. And finally, the family. The Williams, the Germans, the Patties. Thank all you guys. The support you gave me throughout this, those times when I said you had to abide by the gag order, that you wanted to respond to the things that were being put out there, the allegations against you, against your family members, that you respected me to the point where you were willing to agree to abide by that gag order for the betterment of the case. The fact that you supported me throughout it, and I know there may be times you doubted, but you endured. And without your help, we wouldn't have got the conviction. And without your victim impact statements and the graceful words that you gave to the court about how this has influenced your lives, we wouldn't have got the sentence that we got. 130 years, maximum sentence on each count. And so I thank you. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Abby and Libby themselves. Libby for recording the defendant as he walked across the bridge, having the wherewithal to pull out her phone and record that individual, having the
Again with the narrative that Libby's a hero because she took a video and you don't even see the guy in the video, and the words that they said you supposedly hear weren't even audible to anyone in the court when they played it. So the things that they said that Richard Allen was saying, or Bridge Guy was saying, but Bridge Guy was many feet away, but yet you could hear him on the phone. Like, none of it makes sense, and we know this. And why are we still pretending like this is justice?
wherewithal to know that something wasn't right. Arguably the biggest piece of evidence that we had, that recording of their killer. And then to Abby for hiding the phone from the killer so that he couldn't take it with him.
You mean the phone that was just happened to be under her body? Looks like the killer might have hid it because it was under a shoe under her body. I seriously doubt that it was Abby who actually hid that phone.
Hiding the phone so that law enforcement could find it and get that piece of evidence that Libby had collected. Without the efforts from those two little girls, we wouldn't be here today. So Abby and Libby, thank you. I want to say we're very happy with the jury's verdict. We're elated with the judge's ruling, or not the judge's ruling, the judge's sentence. The sentence is appropriate. As Judge Gall stated in court, the aggravators outweigh the mitigators, and the heinous nature of this crime deserve a fully executed sentence. I'll end with this. I want to thank the media for keeping this case in the forefront, for keeping the tips coming in for us to investigate.
Why? They actually didn't. They didn't tell the public anything that was going on in this case. You had to find it on YouTube creators' channels in order to find out court filings and things that were actually happening in this case, because the media just spun the whole prosecutor and law enforcement narrative over and over again.
But I will leave you this word of caution. Please, as Superintendent Carter said, the crime scene photos are still out there, and more may be out there in the future. Please, if you receive those, delete those.
No.
Don't forward those on.
Nope.
Don't re-victimize the family and the other family members.
You can do whatever you want with them.
You can write whatever story you want and report however you want. You do not need those crime scene photos to do so. All it does is re-victimize the families and hurt the reputation of Abby and Libby. So please, if you get those, do not forward those on. If you get any other crime scene photos or autopsy photos or anything, don't forward those on. As Superintendent Carter said, imagine if they were your kids, your grandkids. You can write a story.
You know what? My uncle died in 9/11, and I get to see it all the time and remember it every year on its anniversary. So you know what? I get to watch the planes fly into the towers over and over again whenever they play it and talk about it every year. So, yeah, it sucks, but it's not like it's going to be talked about anyways. You're going to be hearing about it anyways. He's going to be appealing anyways. So whether you see the photos or not, you're going to feel re-victimized anyways. So photos or not, this is just some bullshit excuse that they're using to make it like, well, we're the good guys and the bad guys here who are the defense, they leaked these photos and don't ever look at them because you'll find out the truth that it wasn't Richard Allen and that it was somebody who had some kind of ties with Odinist. That's why they don't want you to look at them.
Without having those pieces as part of the narrative. So please, do not forward those on. I want to thank the community finally, Everybody in the community locally has supported my office, supported law enforcement. The show of support from them has been just unforgettable. I appreciate everything everyone's done. I appreciate the prayers. I appreciate the handshakes, the support, everything that everybody's done throughout this course of the 8-year investigation. When this investigation started, I was actually a defense attorney. I ran for the prosecutor's office in January 1st of 2018, and I knew coming into that office that this case was one that I would have to investigate. And I made it one of my goals not only to investigate it, but to get an arrest, have the trial, and get a conviction. And all the support I had throughout that time, I appreciate it.
So his goal was to have a trial, get a conviction. He didn't care who he was convicting. He just wanted to have a trial and get a conviction. He just said it right there, folks. You see his true motive and intentions.
And so, as Trooper Pierce said, I'm going to answer a few questions. The gag order is lifted. You're more than welcome to talk to anybody up here individually afterwards if they want to talk to you. But I will take a few questions here and now.
Nick, what did you do to help the family navigate the emotions of the swirling narrative outside of the gag order and also the hate and vitriol put on these kids?
It's not easy. It's hard to put yourself in their shoes because I've never had a child die. And so it was very difficult. It took a lot of phone calls, text messages, meetings. A lot of it was, hey, try not to read that stuff that you see on the internet, which is easier said than done. But a lot of it was just moral support and leaning on each other to say, we can't violate the gag order. Let's keep our eye on the ball. We need to get the trial, and we want to try to get the conviction, and then we can talk. And so it was just a lot of words of encouragement between each other, moral support, text message, phone calls, those kind of things.
Go
ahead.
What happened with Ms. O'Jay at the end of the hearing? What was that fight about?
It wasn't a fight. She was just commenting about some things that were said at sentencing, and I'm just going to keep those things to myself.
In your face, though, that's not a fight.
Well, I don't know if she got up in my face. I'll just keep those things to myself. She was just commenting on things that were said at the sentencing. Yes, ma'am.
The defense has made it clear they plan to appeal. Your thoughts on their chances?
Well, it's not up to the defense. It's up to the defendant. I'm not going to repeat his name. He's the defendant at this point. And so he has 30 days to file no
He's not even worthy of a name now. He's just the defendant. He's a convict. We don't even call him by name.
notice with the court that he wants to appeal. If he doesn't file that notice, then there is no appeal. And so once he files that notice, we'll deal with it accordingly. We'll work with the Attorney General's office to represent the state, and we'll give them whatever support that they need in order to draft a response to that appeal.
But I guess given all the questions and you've all addressed it up here and how frustrating it was, your confidence in the security of this verdict and in this maximum sentence?
I feel confident in the verdict and the sentence, but again, I'm not on the Court of Appeals, so they'll have to make that decision if it comes to them.
Part of 2023, and one of the very first pre-trial hearings, you addressed the court as there's possibly some other actors involved. Can you elaborate?
Well, at this point, we don't believe any other actors are involved. We don't have any evidence to support that. If evidence comes out in the future to support that, we'll obviously investigate that. We're not going to say, hey, no, we got the conviction. We're not listening to what you have to say. But at this point, we have no other evidence showing that any other actors were involved.
Liar. You guys had been saying from the beginning that there were multiple suspects. And now you're saying, oh no, we've always thought it was one. We just think it's one now. But no, nothing ever like to tell us why they stopped thinking there were multiple suspects. Nothing to really conclusively prove that Richard Allen even did this.
If Richard Allen himself, the defendant, wants to come forward and give us more information, we'll gladly accept that.
Is that the reasoning for the amended charges?
The amended charges where we added the 2 counts of intentional murder. I did that because I thought it was appropriate at the time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you tell us more about the Anthony Shots?
Hold on just a minute. Do you have a question?
Yeah, can you tell us, or I might be asking to speak on behalf of other people, how it makes you feel with the guilty verdict and a sentence? Obviously, it's the outcome you guys wanted, but how does it make the entire team feel to get to where we are today?
I think, I hate to speak for everybody, but I think, I hate to be cliche and use the word justice, but justice, vindication, to show that the people standing behind me weren't liars, weren't corrupt. You know, those hate mails
Just because he's in jail doesn't mean that they're not liars and they're not corrupt.
and hate messages continue to come in from some podcasters, some YouTubers. But I think just justification that, okay, we conducted a clean investigation, we presented the evidence as best we could, and the jury were convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty.
Nick,
Yes.
does this now mean that all the other men are cleared? Can you use that word?
Who is all the other men?
The other men that were looked at during the course of the investigation that you always said you couldn't say that they're cleared, can you now say they're cleared?
I may not use that word clear, but what I can tell you is we don't have any other evidence that ties them to the offense at this time.
Bullshit.
Are you still looking into the Anthony Shots profile in any other secondary investigation?
What do you mean looking into the Anthony Shots profile?
Well, in 2021, you guys asked for information on the user of that profile. Mr. Klein was in custody at that time, and then just kind of faded out. And all
Well, it didn't fade it out. He was convicted of what, 34, 35 counts?
Is there anybody else connected from that profile to this case at all?
Not that we have any information of that right now.
Can you speak to the timing of today's sentence? Christmas is 5 days away.
So the question was something about the Anthony shots, and you remember the oh, what is this? I can't think of his name, his real name. Keegan Keegan Klein. He was sentenced. He was actually talking to Libby that day, found to be talking to Libby, and there might even be some tie to Kelsey, the older sister, with this guy, which I don't have like all the info, but I've heard that somewhere, so it's interesting to think of it in that perspective. But so this Anthony Shots guy, he used this profile picture, the Keegan Klein, as Anthony Shots. He pretended he was this Anthony Shots and was talking to girls and was basically grooming them and trying to meet with them online. And he was caught. And he was actually caught with talking to a couple girls somewhere else, like some different girls. And that was, I believe, what he was convicted of. But yet they thought that he was tied to this in some way. And then, they had announced it in the press. And then they like backtracked and said, no, now we don't think that. And we think it's Richard Allen, basically.
This is an emotional time of year for a lot
Sure.
of folks when you've lost people and this kind of thing. Can you?
There's no significance in my mind to the timing. Once a person is convicted, they have a right to be sentenced within 30 days. And so I think the timing just was to try to get it in before the holidays because a lot of people do have time off and and the courthouses are closed. So there's no significance in my mind to the timing, but that it worked in everyone's schedule.
I just mean that it's the time of year when people are with people they love, and these two little girls are not with their families today.
I'm not sure I understand your question, but regardless of the time of the year, I imagine it's hard for the family to not be with the victims any day, whether it's somebody's birthday or somebody's anniversary, the other holidays we have out throughout the year. Christmas is probably especially difficult. Again, I don't expect this verdict or the sentence to bring peace to the Patties, the Germans, or the Williams. I don't know what at this point could ever bring peace to a family member that loses a child or a parent that loses a child. What I hope is what I said. I hope it's a sigh of relief that this portion is over and that the conviction as it is now stands and that he's been sentenced to the maximum possible sentence. I hope that is a sigh of relief for them. And I hope that they now, like Superintendent Carter, can continue to heal and start to put this chapter behind them.
Superintendent Carter can begin to heal? What does he need to heal from?
That's why the plea to the media, please do not recirculate those pictures, because all that does, as Mr. Erskine said in his victim impact statement, it's like a scab or a wound that scabs over that is constantly ripped open. It's a constant reminder that our loved ones are put in this vulnerable position.
Nick, should people face criminal charges or any kind of charges if they do publish or share those pictures?
My opinion is if the Indiana Code allows criminal charges to be pressed for those kind of thing, if something comes to my office, criminal charges will be pursued if the criminal code allows it.
Superintendent Carter, can you speak to the number of...
Well, he can ask some questions after we're done here. So
Would you concede that there are some holes in this case or things that cannot be explained, that you guys were not able to explain?
I'm not going to concede that, no. Go ahead.
The judge spoke today to the defendant's conduct, specifically him rolling his eyes throughout
Sure.
the trial. Your take from your professional perspective, you tried other cases. I'm sure you've watched him throughout the case. What was your reaction down to that thing?
It's hard for me to see him because the way we were seated, especially during the trial, we were kind of all crammed.
They're asking like about his mannerisms, and Judge Gull said he rolled his eyes or something. Like, I'd be rolling my eyes too if people are lying about me.
We call it the well. We're kind of all crammed in there, so it's kind of hard for me to focus on him. And the way I try cases is I'm pretty focused on what I'm doing, and I try not to get sucked into the reactions of other people. I like to watch what the jury's reactions to certain things are. And so a lot of the stuff that she commented on, I didn't see from him. What I did notice from him is what I said in my sentencing recommendation, just the lack of remorse and the lack of regret, the lack of emotion, I guess, when the images of the victims are put up on the screen.
If he didn't do it, why would he be feeling guilt and shame and whatever, all those things that you want him to feel? If he's innocent, why would you be expecting to see that from an innocent man?
As a father, when I see those things, and you probably see me up here and other places, I get a little emotional about it, and it's hard not to. And so the lack of those things kind of struck me. I didn't see him rolling the eyes of the judge, of course, but obviously never a good thing to do. So those are my comments on that.
What do you think? What piece of evidence, really quick,
Just one more, then I'll be good. Yeah, sorry.
what piece of evidence, like from his demeanor to any part parts of your case. What piece of evidence do you think did it for the jury, and then also elicit this maximum sentence? What do you think got us here?
Oh, gosh, I don't know what did it for the jury. I think it was a culmination of everything that we had. I think once you start stacking that evidence against him, and as it stacks up, it's hard to say that the defendant isn't Bridge Guy. And if you can accept that he's Bridge Guy, you can accept that he's the killer. And that, to me, is the bottom line. And so
If you have a message for Richard Allen,
If you can accept that he is Bridge Guy, then you can accept that he's the killer. Well, I don't accept that he's Bridge Guy. I don't believe that Bridge Guy is even necessarily the person who is the perpetrator because you didn't even prove that to me. So you should have proved that Bridge Guy was Richard and also the perpetrator, but there's no nexus, as Judge Gold would say.
you could talk to him face to face right now after all this has been said and done, what would you say to him?
I think I would just echo what the superintendent said and what Sheriff Liggett said and some of the things that were said by the victims' families at court. If he truly wants to apologize to the families and admit to what he's done, now's the time to do that. So
Can you say today that Carroll County is safer than it was 8 years ago?
I believe so.
What steps have been taken to make it safer?
Well, I think it's safer in the sense that people can have that sigh of relief to say, okay, we got the guy, we got the conviction. And so I think in that sense, it's safer. I've always thought I was born and raised here in Carroll County. I left, of course, to go to college and law school, but then I came back. And so this has always been my hometown. It's been my hometown for 3 generations or 4 generations in my family. And so I've always thought it's a safe place. And the things that Sheriff Liggett said, the thing that the victim.
So you know he's connected. He's been here for 4 generations, his family. This guy might have some connections and he might be connected to some people as to why he got this position in the first place and why, he might be. I'm just going to put it out there since, the trial's already over. I really feel this is like a town-wide thing. Like there were many, many people in town, like from the town that were involved in this crime. I think these girls were abducted, taken somewhere else, and then brought back later to the spot where they were later found. And I think it was some kind of ritualistic sacrifice. And I truly believe that Odinists were there. I also, we already know that some of the corrections officers in this area have ties to Odinism. So what makes us think that law enforcement wouldn't have ties to Odinism? So why isn't law enforcement being looked at? FBI, we need to look at law enforcement who did a crappy job on the investigating and also could possibly be Odinists themselves and could have been in on this in some way, form, or another. It's just, that's my take on it. And that's why they're protecting it so. And Judge Gold is protecting it so much that, she's probably going to be put behind bars if this ever comes out. Probably not, but she should. So there you have it. There's the press conference and a whole bunch of stuff regarding the sentencing of Richard Allen. We will go more into Jerry Holman, who we didn't hear from here, and I have a little snippet of Jerry Holman for you. So this was right after the press conference, and here he's talking to, I believe it's the same people or some press who was there. So here, let's listen to Jerry Holman. Again, this is lead investigator Jerry Holman.
What were your thoughts before you got on the stand today during the sentencing?
I was pretty much focused on making the point that how brutal the crime was, and that I think he should be sentenced to the maximum that the law would allow. I also wanted to let people know that we weren't corrupt and that there was a lot of false narratives put out.
This is the guy that Doug Carter would walk on shards of glass for. But he's not a liar, guys. He's not a liar. And here he's again saying, we're not corrupt. How many times do you guys have to scream, we're not corrupt, we're not corrupt? We know you're corrupt, and you guys saying we're not corrupt just makes you look corrupt. Sorry, but it does.
I wanted to let people know that we weren't corrupt and that there was a lot of false narratives put out there, and I thought it was very unethical that the attorneys did that, and I think the defendant allowed that.
That is exactly what the defendant allowed that, he said. The defendant allowed the defense attorneys to argue that. Bullshit. A defendant's not going to know, not going to say that. Anyways, whatever. Okay, so yeah, I totally lost my train of thought. What did he say again? Sorry.
Unethical that the attorneys did that, and I think
Was unethical that the attorneys would smear these officers' names, which is ridiculous because it is the job of defense attorneys to actually question law enforcement, question their procedures, protocol, question all of it, question their testing, their everything. It is their job to do that. And when they find problems, it's their job to call it out.
the defendant allowed that, so it's on him. So those were my focuses going into it.
You did a great job. Was it hard for everyone, and I think I know the answer, to not answer back and bite their tongue as this was going on for a long time because of the gag order?
Yeah, it's very difficult to be abused verbally and your character attacked. But to a certain extent, we're used to it. The public scrutinizes our work all the time, and defense attorneys attack us all.
You just said it. Defense attorneys attack us all the time. Well, yeah. So then why are you angry that these defense attorneys are scrutinizing your investigation and your behaviors and mannerisms? Just this defense team can't do it. But other defense teams, it's fine because that's what they're supposed to do. But this defense team can't do it. He's got a real problem with that. And it's the defendant's fault for doing it. Apparently, according to Jerry Holman.
All the time, but this group was over the top, in my opinion. And so to actually be able to respond to their unethical strategies was kind of a breath of fresh air for us to be able to kind of defend ourselves. We're not going to make a big deal out of it, but it's something that we don't like, and I think the general public doesn't feel that way. And so I think moving forward, the biggest thing was justice for Abby and Libby and their families. That's what
I think that ended. But the general public, I think, actually does realize that there's something not right about this case, and they can pretty much assume that it has something to do. We'll end it off with a nice little scenery. And it has something to do with law enforcement and their investigation. Something just doesn't add up. And I think we need to scrutinize what they've done and how they've railroaded an innocent man. And they don't want us to. Obviously, they're sitting there telling us, move to another country if you don't like justice. So if we don't like the outcome of this particular trial, I guess we all should move to another country. So, that's going to be a lot of us. Because I think people are starting to see that the justice system is being weaponized against us. That's what it is. People are being charged or overcharged in a lot of situations that they shouldn't be. And in some cases, people get railroaded just to get a conviction. You heard multiple people say there in that press conference, we just wanted that conviction. We wanted that conviction. Don't care who it is, we just want that conviction. And that's the note I will leave you with for today. So they just wanted a conviction. And I do have some upcoming episodes. Sorry that, this was so delayed, but we will get to more things. I've got some more episodes coming out ahead of this or after this, regarding Jerry Holman's press tour. Like I said, he did a couple of interviews. We're going to read through the transcripts of those interviews and see how ridiculous his nonsense sounds. So I look forward to reading that with you guys in the next one. Please make sure notifications are on, you are subscribed, and please hit that like button on your way out. And I We'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year and take care, guys. Bye now.